ironic. Okay, so we were talking about Jeffrey Epstein. Can I tell you what I was listening to right before this?
Yeah, go ahead. Let me know.
Do you know who Steve Hoffenberg is?
Why does that name sound familiar?
Because this was Jeffrey Epstein's mentor, who he worked with after Bear Stearns at Towers Financial, which eventually got exposed as a Ponzi scheme
Mm,
and for which Rudy Giuliani was the counsel
mm.
for. So he he died like 2 years ago, but he had this like hour-long recording where he was basically spilling everything about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein from their whole life, and he was trying to get the DOJ and the FBI to, like, look into it, and he has I'm gonna send it to you. I'm gonna put a link if I can figure out how to do that. His name is, what's his name? His it's called the Opperman Report.
Okay.
That's what the, recording is, and he basically says that Epstein had been planning to kind of blackmail people and that this was gonna be his way into society and, like, into legitimacy from when he first knew him, that he was first formulating those plans, and,
It sounds
and that
very
was, like,
Epstein.
it was very Epstein. He says that people really only know, like, 25% of what was going on, and, that the trustee, Indyke, I don't remember his first name, something
Hmm.
Indyke, Darren Indyke, has the kind of, like, key to how all the money flowed and that he's still covering for him.
Well,
So
I think that's so that's the reason why, and I'm gonna have Ron Wyden join me, but that's the reason why Ron Wyden's investigation's so important. It's like there's literally a reason why, as a prosecutor, you follow the money. The money is a big tell. And in this instance, there has to be a flow of money coming and going in some way. Like, I don't think Epstein was doing anything with co-conspirators and other bad people without some type of financial gain. For Jeffrey Epstein, everything kind of devolved and revolved around money and power and influence. But to your point, no, there is no greater way to influence somebody without having, other than having blackmail, right?
and,
Some
like, the
type of,
worst type of
yeah,
blackmail that you could
compromat, as
imagine.
we call it, right?
Yeah.
The worst kind of blackmail, compromat, is something like this. And I feel like that is the reason why Ghislaine Maxwell being lionized now at News Nation or Newsmax, whatever the hell it is, about how MAGA's trying to make her into the victim is particularly galling because Epstein would not have been able to do this on his own. By all accounts, he was socially awkward as well. And he
Mhm.
was not some like super kind of debonair guy, which is why the Ghislaine Maxwell angle was so powerful. Not to mention the fact that her being a woman in and of itself created a sense of security for the girls to think that, oh, that she can't possibly, be bringing me into a bad situation. And so her guilt is so bad, and it is just galling that anybody's trying to say that she is some type of um she's the holy grail, like the answer to all of these unanswered questions from MAGA is wild to me.
She's the poison tree. The only reason they're turning her into this is because that's, like, the bar they have to grab onto. It's like they feel themselves falling through the abyss, and they're like, "Oh, maybe Ghislaine will help us." Like, I don't think look, I think that what she has done, I would go so far as to say that this operation would not exist without her for more than
100%.
one reason too, because she wouldn't have the connections into, intelligence that were ultimately so critical for him, whether or not he was, like, officially a spy or whatever. He utilized those connections, and he was, like, cavorting with world leaders, and that was, like, pretty important. And she was the operations.
She was. And remember, she came from England, and she came from money and high society already in Europe, and she was kind of She
She
gave
knew everyone.
him yeah, she gave him the imprimatur of credibility to be able to move in these circles, and these were circles of power and influence and money, and that's the reason why I also think, because you and I were talking about this before I went live, it was the worst kept secret, right? This is like people we've now heard the recordings from Donald Trump, how Epstein was stealing his girls from the spa at Mar-a-Lago, one of which was Virginia Joffrey, which is wild.
What are
But
these 16-year-old girls who are working in his spa?
well, I was saying to Don Lemon last night, every accusation is a confession with
Yeah.
Republicans. And, Donald Trump has undocumented immigrants working at his, golf clubs and,
Mhm.
and clubs or whatever. I mean, but that's okay. He can do that, but other people cannot. But the thing is though about Ghislaine Maxwell is I've spent so much time just in the legal filings, like refreshing my recollection. And I've gone back and I've also been reading like all of the filings about her appeal to the Supreme Court right now. And then I've been looking at her sentencing memoranda when she got sentenced back in 2022. And she, and the reason why I have to agree with you even more, Sammy, about her having been the mastermind of all of this is even everything that's unraveling right now is being done by her. She's the
Oh,
one who
yeah.
approached the Department of Justice. She is playing them all. She's playing them all for a fool. And but she's still a convenient tool for Donald Trump because if she can say that Trump didn't do anything wrong and it was all Bill Clinton and Democrats,
Yeah.
and at the same time get a concession from Trump. I do not think he's going to give a pardon or a commutation. I think that is just beyond the pale, even for MAGA, which is stunning to say. But this pending issue with the Supreme Court about the non prosecution agreement for Jeffrey Epstein is a very real legal out for Ghislaine Maxwell. And I think that post Todd Blanche meeting with her, there's going to be a lot more meat on the bone than there was before for this angle for her.
I mean, I think that she would have only sorry. Of course, that's why he's, like, willing to do this. I think that's why they have to lionize her because they need that to work, to play this fantasy out where, like, Donald Trump is innocent and it's all Bill Clinton's fault, and that's one reason. 2 is that she Todd Blanche obviously is going to try to make Trump look good. Like, this is a personal errand. There were no other people in the room, but I think what her her role in this was, like, so much to the point where, like, people I don't actually think the girls would have gone along with it if it wasn't for her on some level.
Well, she groomed them.
Yeah.
She also recruited them. Then she also recruited the girls that went out and recruited other girls. She trained
Mhm.
them on what to say and what to do. And she normalized the deviant behavior. Like when she's
Oh, yeah.
present and she's making it like it is okay for all of these bad sex acts to be happening with these little girls, like, and she's saying it's okay. And again, if you're a young girl and you see a woman there who, by all accounts, people were like, she was friendly, she befriended them, she was kind to them. Many of the girls came from broken homes or they were suffering in some way and they were looking for somebody to look out for them. She normalized the deviant behavior. And I don't think Jeffrey Epstein would have been able to do that, right?
Yeah.
Epstein would have been looked at all the flashing red lights and alarm bells going off, predator, predator. But if Ghislaine is there to be like, no, 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 like this is
We
how we
do
do the
this.
massages, this is how things are. If you're some 14-year-old girl, you don't know any better, right?
Right.
How are
How
you
would you
supposed to
know?
know?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then also what they would do, this was also part of the recording, is that they would, go after their families, like, so that it was basically impossible for them to not go along with this. But there's something else you said about how she's orchestrating all of this now.
Mm.
I saw it was reported, I can't remember who said it, but that her family was the one that had leaked the picture to and the birthday book to the Wall Street Journal as sort of like a shot across the bow so that he would know that there's, like, more to come.
Yeah, that Trump would it's like a warning sign to Trump that she has listen, let's be very clear. Ghislaine Maxwell knows it all. She probably
She
knows
knows
more
more
than what
than him.
Jeffrey Epstein did,
Yeah.
right? And I want to say that she poses a very real threat to a lot of people, not just Donald Trump.
Right.
What I have never figured out is the following, and that's part of the reason why I'm so, up in arms about her talking to Blanche and trying to negotiate demands with Congress right now.
Which
This
are
won't,
which were outrageous.
which
The
are
nerve.
nuts, nuts. But
Nuts.
here's the thing, Sammy.
Well, that's how she's probably saying,
She
like,
could have,
I can.
but she could have talked before now.
Of
For
course,
somebody who knows stuff. So I'm asking you then, why do you think she's never spilled the beans
because
in
she
all
never
of these
had,
years?
because I don't think that she would like had the I think that the soil had to be fertile, and it wasn't she didn't have an opening. Like, she couldn't have done I don't think she would have really gotten very far with the Biden administration. Like, I don't think like, their incentive to cover it up, like, no one's ever suggested that the Bidens have anything to do with this. So it's like their incentive to cover it up is, like, not that good. Um, but with Trump, I think once Elon Musk said he was in the files and then it became like
Mm.
a thing, I think she was like, "Oh, I can use this to my opportunity." But my guess was that she probably would have waited till like the end of his term to maybe start like I think she was always going to pursue the Supreme Court. She was always going to do that. My guess is that he's not going to pardon her either. I think if anything, the Supreme Court will somehow like overturn the conviction and then oop, it's off his hands.
Well, the Supreme Court has to agree to take the appeal in the first place. And I'd have to say, when I look at somebody like Amy Coney Barrett, for example, I don't think she would ever agree to take this appeal.
But what about
Even
the other
though,
5?
well, you only need 4, frankly, at this point, or 5 to do it.
Right.
I look at them. It depends if they buy the argument that there is a split in the circuits that needs to be resolved, and that's the reason why the court needs to take it. But timing is really critical here because they're on summer recess, so they're not going to take this. They're not. There's not even going to be any resolution of whether they're going to take up her appeal for a few months. And
Till
she
October-ish?
well, no, like they would when they come back, they would make a decision if they're going to take it, but the earliest you'd have arguments on it would be like October. But this is what I'm wondering. How is she going to manage this congressional subpoena in the meantime? How is she going to
Stonewall?
navigate that? Well,
They
and
all Stonewall?
that's why one of her demands, when you look at one of her demands was, quote,
Resolve the court case.
the interview would be scheduled only after the resolution of her Supreme Court petition and her forthcoming habeas petition. And so it says, otherwise, Maxwell will have no choice but to invoke her Fifth Amendment rights. But why is she invoking Fifth Amendment, talking to Congress, other than the reality, which is you cannot lie to Congress? But she had no problem sitting down with Todd Blanche, Trump's personal attorney, for 9 fucking
'Cause
hours. Like,
she had
what did she say for
immunity.
9 hours? Yeah.
Well,
It's
what did she say for 9 hours? That's right. What if they were she probably was going through, like, all the people she has stuff on so that
well,
they
he
can
had a list
craft,
of
like, their
names.
own.
Blanche had a list of
Right.
names. Where did he get the list of names from? If there's no listen, I don't think that client list was 100 people. I think the client list was a lot more. But
Yeah.
Blanche conveniently went in with a list of 100 names.
Can someone just commented something
Mm,
interesting. Michael Cohen lied to Congress. I have an interesting question. So there was the Katie Johnson lawsuit in 2016 that went away right before the election. We know at this time that Michael Cohen was basically buying off
was
people,
fixing. Yeah.
on his behalf. Does Michael Cohen have anything to share with the class, like about any other people who he might have made payments to or made threats to around that time? Like,
I
why
don't
is the
know.
only person on the table to subpoena her? Like, why aren't we subpoenaing other people or just inviting other people to testify? There seem like there are so many
They
people who can be brought
should.
into this, and like, why is
They,
Ghislaine Maxwell the one we got to hear from?
so they should invite all of the victims to go and testify.
Or witnesses, like, or other people who were part of the non-prosecution agreement.
Well, there were certain people that were never prosecuted that were very obvious kind of helpers and co-conspirators in this. It kind of reminds me of R. Kelly, P. Diddy, that whole kind of thing, which is you can't operate alone. Like you need people to set things up. You need people to do things. There are people that are working, in these different places. They're witnessing things. Um, and it's amazing though that to your point, remember Epstein first looked down the barrel at charges as far back as 2006. We've been dealing this for almost 20 years, almost 20 years of Epstein next year.
It was 2005.
And
It was 2005 that they
yeah,
first brought it. So we are
and
on our 20th anniversary.
and so like, and it's been state prosecutors, federal prosecutors in different jurisdictions, law enforcement, FBI, etc. And I think it just speaks to the kind of people that are implicated in this, the level of power of people that are implicated in this, that this has been so tightly held, and that it's only been Maxwell, Epstein, and that's pretty much about it. There are a few other people that are referenced in the indictments, et cetera, but otherwise, nah, they're not, they haven't been prosecuted and then nothing's happened.
Right. So what is going to happen? What is like the latest with her appeal? Will you say the Supreme Court will only take it if they're resolving an issue between two circuit courts? Is that
Yeah.
really what's going to drive this?
So it's not just two circuit courts, it's like a number of courts in terms of a split. So it's actually a really interesting legal thing. And I spent some time breaking it down on my Substack and on my YouTube channel because I want people to understand what's at issue here. So Ghislaine Maxwell was not a party to the non-prosecution agreement, which was the sweetheart deal that Epstein got with the Palm
Mhm.
Beach County State Attorney's Office, as well as the feds, which was Alex Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney at the time down in Florida in '07. And then he eventually ended up being that Secretary of Labor in Trump 1.0. But do you remember? I don't know if people remember, but Acosta had to leave that job because of the furor that
Yes.
happened because of Epstein. And the
Yes.
furor that was going on where the victims were like, we were never consulted for this non-prosecution. We were never consulted for the plea. And so there was this big investigation. And I have the
Which is
report here.
illegal, right?
Yeah, there's a Victim Rights Act, but I have the report here. But anyway, so there was a big investigation that happened by the Office of Professional Responsibility at the DOJ, and because of that, Alex Acosta got burned hard, and so he was the fall guy for it. But the reason why this is relevant is Epstein's sweetheart deal was he would never be prosecuted by the feds down in the Southern District of Florida in exchange for him taking a plea to 2 charges in state court. So I also want to footnote that you had a state attorney in the Palm Beach County at the time that was involved in this. I mean, you had a lot of dirty people dealing with all of this. There was some massive backroom deals that were happening on this for Jeffrey Epstein, which, yes, was he a prolific pedophile? Yes. But why him? Unless he had the goods, to your point, unless he had blackmail or compromat that was so valuable that people had to make sure that he was punished, but not to the level where, he
Right.
would say anything, right? So after he got this non-prosecution agreement, there was a critical provision that said that co-conspirators would not be prosecuted as a result as well of this non-prosecution agreement. So remember, this is back in '07, and he does his 18 months, which is it was total bullshit. He was
It was
able
like
to,
prison at night.
yeah, and it was
Night
like
prison.
house arrest, and he was able
Yeah.
to go to work during the day and all sorts of
Work.
crazy shit. Yeah, he did
What's
work.
his job? Does everyone know what his job is?
I don't know, he made a lot of money, right? So fast forward to 2019, Epstein gets indicted by the Southern District of New York. And so what's the first thing he says? You can't indict me. I have a non-prosecution agreement. But the Southern District of New York said, it only has to do with the Southern District of Florida. Tough shit. We've indicted you. So he's battling that, and then he mysteriously dies, right?
Mhm.
He's dead. So Ghislaine Maxwell doesn't get indicted until 2020 after Epstein's dead. But
So that
also
agreement is
remember,
like moot.
no. The
Yeah.
agreement is still at play, but here's the thing. Maxwell, nobody knew where she was for a really long time. And if you guys remember, there was this like spotting of her at an In-N-Out in California, and it made all the news, like
Yes.
TMZ and everything, whatever. But when she finally got indicted, they found her hiding out in some like big ass house in New
New Hampshire.
Hampshire, and they took her into custody. Ever since she's been indicted, she has claimed that she is a beneficiary, a third-party beneficiary of that deal, of that non-prosecution agreement. But the Southern District of New York says, no, Jeffrey Epstein tried that. We told him no. We're telling you no. And the trial judge says, I agree. It doesn't apply to you. Even if it did, the crimes for which you are being charged, Miss Maxwell, far exceed what this non-prosecution agreement would have contemplated. So she loses after she goes to trial and she gets sentenced to the 20 years, followed by 5 years of supervised release. She takes an appeal to the Second District Court of Appeals, which is the Second Circuit, Court of Appeals, which is the one that's over the Southern District in New York. She tries the same gambit. She says there was all these errors at the trial, and I never should have been prosecuted in the first place because of this no prosecution of co-conspirators clause. Second Circuit says, nope, still doesn't work. Try again, doesn't work, and affirms her convictions and sentence. So now her only place left is the Supreme Court. But as we all know, the Supreme Court has no obligation to take your appeal. The Supreme Court will only take your appeal upon certain circumstances, one of which is certain circuits disagree on how to treat certain legal issues. So what has Maxwell raised? Maxwell says, sure, the Second Circuit, where New York is, and others say that that non-prosecution agreement is only specific to the Southern District of Florida. It is only specific to the U.S. Attorney's Office within which that agreement has been signed. However, other circuits have taken the position that a non-prosecution agreement actually is binding on other U.S. attorneys' offices. And so the reason why I bring that up is in the reply brief that Ghislaine Maxwell was required to file, and she did on Monday, in the reply brief, she made it very clear that because there is a disagreement between certain circuits about whether or not the government actually has to allow the benefit of that co-conspirators agreement, the non-prosecution, to go to people like Ghislaine Maxwell, because that there are opposite results in different jurisdictions that undermine the uniformity of federal law and the integrity of plea bargains nationwide, the court's review of this appeal is warranted.
You know,
So the U.S.
this is
Supreme
like,
Court has an ability to take her appeal. They have an ability to take it.
I mean, seems like such an abuse of the justice system, and like, because you can afford to do this, which I believe something Stephen Hoppenberg also mentioned is that Epstein's trust is paying her legal fees. So
Remember, she made more than $23 million from him.
that
And
sounds
she got
low, honestly. I bet you she
and she
made
got a
way more.
townhome, but she also traveled high on the hog for free when she was with Epstein. And people
She
need
didn't
to
spend
remember too,
anything.
they dated. They were boyfriend girlfriend.
No, she was into him. But it was a cover. Like,
Well, either way,
for him, it was a cover. For
dating
her, it was, yeah,
yeah,
dating.
all of this,
Yeah.
whatever. But anyway, so it's amazing though, in my opinion, that if the Supreme Court takes this and they say, because Ghislaine Maxwell's argument is, if you make me a promise, you have to keep the promise. And the DOJ's like, oh, well, no, because you weren't a party to this. And she's like, but I'm the third party beneficiary because I was a contemplated co-conspirator here. But it's kind of weird if you guys stop and think about it.
You're like
It's
saying I'm guilty, so I should be covered. That's literally what she's saying.
Yeah, she's like, my hands are dirty. I'm a co-conspirator, but I get the protection of it. I'm like, lady, I don't know if I would take that position because it's really inconsistent with what you've said before. Remember, she's run around telling everybody that she's been the victim of Jeffrey Epstein herself, that she was manipulated by him and that she didn't do anything bad, blah,
So
blah,
she's
blah.
not a co-conspirator then.
I mean, riddle
There's
me
a
that.
question someone asked, which I think is
Sure.
kind of fundamental. Why was there even this non-prosecution agreement that covered all these people? Like, what's the excuse for that? How did it
I don't
even
know.
get,
Maybe we
other
need to
than
ask
Alex
Alex
Acosta?
Acosta. Maybe we
But,
need to
but
ask him that.
I know, but like, what in like what most charitable take? What's the justification for that?
That's a
Sorry,
tough
you can
one,
hear my dog
Sammy. Yeah, I
snoring.
know. Hi. No, it's a tough one to answer, Sammy, because as a former prosecutor,
Like, when
if
would
I
you do that?
no, because
If
remember,
would you do it,
Epstein.
not in this case, in general, when would you offer something like
Well,
a non-prosecution agreement?
I mean, I
Like, what
I would I
circumstances?
listen. When I was a prosecutor, the non-prosecution agreements I did were it's like your first DUI. Nobody got hurt, no property damage.
Okay.
You go and you do like an alcohol class, community service hours, and you do a DUI school, and I won't prosecute you, right? I mean, that's the type
Okay.
of non-prosecution it is. You're a first-time offender. You go and you've done something wrong, and there's no victim, and it's, that kind of thing.
What about
In
in like
this,
a RICO case? Like, would there be a non-prosecution agreement for someone who
it's
cooperates?
Well, no, you would get sentence mitigation though. You would flip.
Okay.
You would become a flip and you'd be a government, cooperator,
Okay.
which is why I was always wondering, was
Someone
there
else loves your
something?
glasses, by the way.
Oh, really? They're my reading glasses. If I don't have mine, I can't see you guys. So
They're
here's
good.
here's the thing though. If back in remember this is back in 06, 07, right? When all this is going down. Maybe, and this is charitable. Maybe they thought that Epstein would be able to flip against bigger people, as in the men that participated in the child sex trafficking and the pedophilia. And maybe they were big names, politicians, businessmen, heads of state, princes. Maybe there was some value there. But what's crazy is no other prosecutions ever came from this Epstein thing. So it leads me to believe that he didn't offer them anything. And then that kind of leads us to the Ghislaine Maxwell thing again, which is if Ghislaine had good stuff, she would have been able to be of value, but Epstein was dead. So if you're the feds, you're like, look, Ghislaine was just as bad as Epstein. Maybe Ghislaine can help us go after some other bad people, but she didn't talk, right? So I'm so offended by this idea that people think that Ghislaine Maxwell was silenced in some way until now. Excuse me.
Yeah.
This
She's
woman could have
diabolical.
mitigated her sentence years ago. And that
She
is
doesn't
why
have
I'm thinking to myself,
remorse, also. That's like
no,
pretty key.
no. And that's why her sentence showed when she got federally sentenced, it said under the sentencing guidelines, you have showed remorse. In fact, you're a liar. So we're not going to give you the benefit of a lower sentence.
One of the victims, I think it was Sarah Ransom, said that she thinks that Ghislaine being out on the streets is an actual menace to society and like that she would do this again. And like, I kind of agree. Like, I don't see her being like, yeah, I'm just gonna like chill now. I could see
No.
her being like, there's a demand, there's a business, whatever. I'm sure there were other things that they're doing that we don't know about. And yeah, I could see her just kind of like picking it up again.
And the thing about her is she doesn't think that she did anything wrong, right? So if she were to get the benefit of a pardon or a commutation, if she were to get the benefit of the Supreme Court saying, you know what, she never should have been prosecuted in the first place because of this non-prosecution clause, think about how emboldened she would be. Now, I also think, though, that there is still enough of a sliver of decency in American society that would shun her. I do think that this is one of the most
Yeah.
outrageous scandals that we have ever had in American and other history. And I do think that she would be shunned. But
She
I
would be
do,
shunned from public, but I don't think she would be shunned from the people who would like avail themselves of her services. And people like, I think what this is exposing is that there's a very dark layer of power and influence and actions. Like, I think there's something really perverse, like that these people really feel that they are actually above the law. It has been confirmed for them
mm,
over and over. And I think that like she would just return to that again.
well, I think that's a fair assertion. And the
And it
reason
would stay
why
in the
is
shadows.
exactly, because there is we use the word privilege a lot in our discourse. We use it in regular discourse as well as in political discourse. And in this instance, when it comes to justice, there is a privilege that people get of a certain wealth, of a certain skin color, a certain race, right? And in this instance, you have people that did horrific acts with children with impunity because there was no justice that was going to be sought. Who was going to seek justice for these little girls? Like nobody was going to do it for them, which is why, even if, because there's some, you want to talk about generous kind of constructions of things. Like some people are like, Todd Blanche went and it was performative because he's just going to come back and say, I spoke with her. There's still nothing new. Pamela Joe, Cash Patel, and Dom Bingo Boingo whatever Bongino and I looked through everything, and there's nothing to turn out. So MAGA, be satisfied. We looked the devil in the eye. We went to the depths of hell, and we came back, and President Trump is right. Even if it's performative though, Sammy, how dare you normalize giving this woman the privilege of this meeting, these 9 hours? How dare you normalize allowing other people to think that this woman has value to engage in even in the conversation in the first place? That is what's horrific that, and you and I were talking about this, there has been a normalization of things courtesy of Donald Trump that I fear our society is never going to come back from. That we are so conditioned now to think that the worst is okay. And it's all because everything that is done by Trump and his administration normalizes it. It gives us in the perimeter of credibility because when the DOJ allows DHS and ICE to round up people and abduct them and to do the horrible things that they do, it's terrifying that then the Supreme Court says you can snatch people and send them to countries they're not even from, and it's okay. And so this is yet another example of how this system has been so broken to the point where you have the Deputy Attorney General of the United States getting on a plane and flying his own ass down to see this woman and meeting with her for 9 hours and allowing that to be the primary thing that we are talking about, not the people that don't get their health insurance and not the people that are dying from gun violence and not the immigrants that are being stolen, right? Um, but I will say this. If there is a way to breach the hull of the insanity that is MAGA, I don't have a problem talking about this if it is a way to expose the hypocrisy of Trump and to let people know in MAGA land, because I sure as hell am not going to save them. But hey, you know what? Maybe that promises made, promises not kept thing about, this exposure should make you realize that Trump is a liar and he doesn't keep his promises.
Absolutely. I think that we know that this is central to the mythology of him and to what the cult is about. And the media ecosystem and, his, demagoguery allowed people to believe that he was going to be the savior. But what you're saying, I agree. It feels like almost, I hate to be, so extreme sounding about it, but it does feel like a really like fundamental battle of just
Mm.
really evil behavior. And I would say that that's what QAnon was driven by. They felt that he was their white hat who was going to save the world from these pedophiles. And
Pizzagate.
yeah, it is.
Pizzagate was the whole thing, right? It was
Yeah.
the pedophile ring that was being run out of the pizza parlor in DC. That was the whole John Podesta, Hillary Clinton thing, and that was a QAnon favorite. That was a cult classic for them.
My hope is that two things is that, okay, the pendulum could swing, I don't know if everyone's just going to be like more like morally bankrupt eternally. You know what I mean? Like at some point there could be just a swing towards like accountability and rationality and humanity. Like that's what I'm really hoping for. But then also it's like, we have to make that happen. But, obviously we're trying. But the other piece of this is that I feel that this is like part and parcel of other issues too. Like the fact that you have these people on the Supreme Court who legitimize these really disgusting decisions. I think that like part of why I feel that this is an important discussion is not just because of what has they've done to the victims, but because their their ability to do it represents something bigger. And it's kind of like it goes along with this like old way of thinking that like certain people should just be able to get away with certain things and then other people are, for my friends, for my enemies the law, and for my friends everything, for my enemies the law. And that's really been happening for a long time. It's just hasn't been as apparent. And I don't know, I'm hoping that this will like, I don't know, cycle out some leaders who are, maybe we don't need their influence anymore.
Well, if you'll recall, and for those of you and I can't see because it literally says one person at the top of
Oh,
my thing,
oh, we have
which
more
is the funny
people.
thing.
We
No,
have
with
way more
this
people.
one
We have
person. I'm like,
700 people.
is it just
Oh
you
my
and I
God.
hanging out?
No, we have
Anyway,
700 people. Oh, that's so annoying. I don't know why I
that's so
shouldn't
funny.
have.
No,
Oh
it's
my
fine. But anyway,
gosh.
but you and I, when we were talking about the P. Diddy stuff as the P. Diddy trial was going on, part of the reason why we spoke about it and we were trying to kind of explain to people was it wasn't the salacious part of it, right? It wasn't the jugs of lube and whatever, whatever. That wasn't it. It was it was the exposing of the fact that these people can think that they can get away with this, and but they
Yes.
can for so long.
Yeah.
And that there are facilitators at every step of the way that are creating these pathways so that these things can happen. And that's why we talked about P. Diddy. We talked about wealth and celebrity and money and intimidation and coercion and fear and how powerful those things can be. It's the same thing here. It's wealth and money and coercion and intimidation and fear. It's just the girls are just younger, right? I mean, it's the same idea, and that is why these are incredibly important conversations to be had, because we need to continue to highlight how wrong it is to allow these things to go on for as long as they do without somebody calling it out for the wrong that it is.
Yeah, and I think on some level, this is even more egregious and hard to crack than the Diddy stuff because I think there are so many world leaders and like global interests who really like there are so many powerful people, not just like a few Hollywood celebrities who really want to prevent this from coming out. And it's like I don't know, it's going to be a lot, right,
So
Bruce?
so we're all
Yeah.
gonna so we're not gonna have a decision whether the Supreme Court's gonna take up this appeal anytime soon. So that's kind of on the back burner. But we do have an August 11 date for the deposition of Ghislaine Maxwell by House Oversight. So let's see, that's gonna be the kind of next kind of news
Mhm.
flashpoint. How does oversight deal with her demands? And what
Will
does
that be
anything
televised?
happen? No, it won't be televised.
Will we get the transcript?
We should. Um,
Is
but
that normal?
there's also a subpoena that's been sent by House Oversight to the Department of Justice for the entirety of the Epstein files that Comer signed off on. So there is some bipartisan efforts to be able to get this information publicly available. When I interviewed Congressman Robert Garcia last week, right after that subpoena had been approved on his committee, with the amazing work of Representative Summer Lee, Garcia was telling me though that their fear is obviously they get highly redacted information or they get they get significant pushback from Pamela Joe at
They will.
DOJ, whatever. So we got to see, because there is, and I always go back to the papers, but the DOJ memo itself is important because it says that they had more than 300 something gigabytes. Remember we talked about this, you, me, and
Yeah.
V? So there's more than 300 gigabytes of data. And I'm thinking to myself, I haven't seen more than 300 gigabytes of data released publicly in any of this.
Also, there was new reporting, I think it's from CBS, that that basically that prison video was like the
Oh,
wrong thing. It was like
yeah.
the wrong door, and also that the real video would not have a missing minute. So what did they cut? Why did they cut something
Well, remember, she claimed that every video back then had a missing minute and some change because
back then, 2019, back in the
their
day before the
surveillance
pandemic? Yeah,
that's when the surveillance video would reset or some bullshit. But she didn't even believe like the bullshit she was shoveling, right?
no,
Like
she did.
she didn't even know. And so I think, oh, this is so funny. Now I can see the comments. What'd you
That's
do? Did you do something?
nothing. I didn't touch anything. Yeah.
That was weird. Well,
Maybe it was
hello to
like a
everybody.
internet thing.
That is bizarre. Now I can
Oh,
see everybody.
it's 3 minutes that are missing.
Yeah. And so, but her explanation was bunk. And now we know that there's actually the video that but the offensive thing about it is, again, they try to gaslight the shit out of us, and it drives me nuts. Quote, the
Yeah.
full raw and enhanced videos are available at the following links. But what was there, as we know, are not the full. And the only thing they say that they did was the FBI enhanced the relevant footage by increasing its contrast, balancing the color, and improving its sharpness for greater clarity and viewability.
Okay.
Where did you say, Pamela Joe and Cash Patel, that you actually spliced shit together? Because I mean, that's the part that I'm like, they must think we're dumb. That's why I'm like MAGA. I think most MAGA's dumb, but MAGA, you can't be that dumb. Like, why are you letting yourself get played so badly by Trump
Maybe
and these people? I don't get it.
I think they're realizing that they've been played and okay, think about it this way, like the crushing weight of the psychological realization that this thing that you have believed for a decade now is a lie. You put a flag on your house, probably. You've been wearing Trump attire, you've been wearing a hat. You have to deconstruct your worldview. Like it has to hit, it has to set in. And I actually think that Trump is making this worse for himself by like dragging it so much because it's giving more time for it to set in with people.
Well, and you know, have you heard of the Good Liars, Sammy? They're the
Yes.
guys. I love them. It's
Yeah.
Jason and I forget the other guy's name. He's lovely too. When I interviewed them on Substack, you know what they said? You go to these MAGA rallies, and I'm like, but Trump gets busted all the time lying. What happens when these people realize that he's lying about something? And Jason said they just move on to the next conspiracy. Like they're okay with the goalposts constantly moving. They
Mhm.
rationalize for themselves something. So he said they went to Trump's birthday parade where nobody showed up. Remember the military
Yeah.
parade?
Oh, I remember.
And they said that at this parade, they said it was very QAnon-y, very QAnon-esque at these things. And that day they were like, we're here because Trump has assembled the military because today is the day that Trump takes over the country and then the world through military might. Adds in Trump was going to do a coup of his own that day. And I was like, so what happens, Jason, when it's just a whole bunch of people walking by in a parade and nothing happens? And he goes, they said to me, oh, this is his plan. He
Yeah.
wanted he wanted people to think that it was going to happen, but it will happen. This is just part of the plan. And I'm thinking, we can't reach people like that, though, Sammy. Like
But
we're never going to be able to penetrate that. I doubt.
I don't even try. I'm not like going for those people. I feel that like when you have like a Charlie Kirk, even once you have like a certain level of influencer who's able to say like this doesn't pass the smell test, or even Joe Rogan, who's like,
I would go with Joe
I
Rogan
think
more than
they're a
Charlie because
better,
Charlie backpedaled.
you're right,
He
you know,
backpedaled, so I'd go with Joe Rogan. Yeah.
Joe Rogan and Andrew Schultz, I actually think are a better gauge. Like those are the people you need to convince. And then look, we're always going to have like my belief is that there's like 10% of the country, 10% of the population is like evil and crazy and just like cannot in the world, like everywhere, 10% are just like going to be batshit. And the rest of us have to kind of prevent them from gaining more numbers. So Trump has never hit above 43% or something.
There's a reason why. Yeah.
Yeah, but because of how our government, the electoral college, I mean, although he won, whatever. Okay, do we have any final thoughts? What do you think is going to happen next? Are we hearing from, want to reconvene
Uh,
after the
I think I
depositions that maybe
Yeah,
happen or
I
don't?
think we should. I mean, listen, I'm always I'm always grateful for this opportunity to spend
I
time
love
with you,
doing
and
this.
we miss V. So
Yeah.
shout out to our homie V who's not here right now. Um, I I believe that we're going to see a lot of obfuscation and a lot of blocking and obstacles being raised by DOJ. And to your point, and to the collective point of the folks here on the chat, the more they try to throw up obstacles, the worse it's going to be for Trump. So I think Trump's going to actually have to reach a critical mass analysis point for himself where he has to figure out, I'm going to have to cut my losses one way or another. So he may look for a new fall guy. I think it's very telling that Pam Bondi didn't go to Tallahassee and that he sent Todd Blanche. That was a very big deal, in my humble opinion. I have
Okay.
said that he looks
They're
at Todd
closer.
Blanche. Todd Blanche and him are closer. Todd is in, I've used the adjective battle tested. In Donald Trump's mind, Todd is a battle tested warrior for him. Pam Bondi is not. Pamela Joe created a lot of drama with that binder thing and all that other stuff, right? With the Epstein files. But I believe that he's going to be looking for another scapegoat. And I also believe that we're going to maybe get drip, drip, drip of some information. I think he's going to say, there's more information. Here it is, heavily redacted, blah, blah, blah. But there's also pending court dates, Sammy, on the motion to unseal the grand jury transcripts, which again is performative by this
I don't care.
DOJ, but there's some
Yeah.
upcoming hearing dates.
Yeah.
So those are kind of some threshold dates that we're keeping our eyes on to kind of see what ends up happening, which I'm kind of making sure that, we get the filings or whatever. Um, but I don't expect a lot of significant activity in the next, couple of weeks. But I think that means it gives us time to reach out and elevate the stories of the victims. I think in this kind of lull of significant legal activity, we should be talking to the victims. And so anytime you guys see it, amplify it, share it. When you guys see a story or an interview about the victims, get that information out so we can flood the zone with their stories, because it is re-traumatizing them having to go through this again.
Right. So it might as, they want justice at the end of this in some way. I doubt they'll ever be able to, with him gone, that's limited, but something can be done. I also think there's a chance that there could be some sort of like black swan event where something
Mm.
unpredictable happens, either like a story breaks. Also, there was a file that the DOJ went through of all the mentions of Trump
Yep.
in the Epstein files, and that's in a SharePoint. Apparently, that's in like a shared SharePoint file, and SharePoint was recently hacked, or it's like very vulnerable to hack. So anyone could have this information.
Is it anonymous? Who is it, the one
Anonymous.
that's yeah, it's anonymous that does it. I will say this too, the birthday card being breaking news, that was new news.
Mhm.
CNN had some new photos the other day. I also think we should keep our eyes on the Wall Street Journal lawsuit, that bullshit fucking lawsuit that Trump brought against the Wall Street Journal down here in the Southern
Yeah.
District of Florida because of the birthday card. That is going to be interesting because there's the interface, assuming that the Wall Street Journal doesn't win on their motion to dismiss, there will be a discovery opportunity. And Sammy, in discovery, what is at issue? The relationship between Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, right? So
Yes.
there is an opportunity to maybe get some more information. It won't be happening right now. And that's why I'm saying there might be a lull in some activity. But I suspect we're going to see more, to your point, of a drip, drip, drip of more new revealing things about Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. But again, I'm just kind of generally disgusted with the Ghislaine Maxwell stuff. And I hope that that's put to bed very soon.
Yeah. I have no words for her, but the word discovery does make me feel a little bit of an adrenaline rush. So thank you so much, Katie. This is so fun. We will let you know when we're going to be back, and we will be with you all the way. Hopefully, Ghislaine Maxwell doesn't get off, because I'll be furious.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Bye, Sammy. I'll see you guys later. Bye,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.